Missed an episode of your favorite podcast? Choose from over a decade of content in our archives, not just the latest episode. All free at gcnlive.com.
This is your call to action. Get prepared, America. Economy, survival, energy, disasters. This is USAPrepares.com. Informative radio, educational radio. Interact now by emailing instructor@USAPrepares.com or text at 434-390-7953. Class, please take your seats. Now, your instructor, Vincent Finelli.
Everyone all set, cocked, locked. Here we go. Your dial set correctly to USA Prepares. We're delighted you're with us today. We broadcast 2 hours from Missouri, high atop the Ozark Mountains. If you'd like to call us, we'll pay for the call. 866-582-9933. 866-582-9933. There's a telephone listen line, and you can listen to the broadcast as you move about your home or office or travel. 605-477-3249. Repeat, 605-477-3249. We are going to connect with Guineith Isaacs. We're doing that right now, and our engineer is taking care of that. And I wanted to share an interesting thought. Guineith Isaacs is in Australia. She lives on a farm. She's a farmer. She's a single mom. Her husband passed away. And she's raising her children on this farmhouse in a semi-arid environment. And she does everything by hand. No tractors, no mechanized equipment. And she lives in a farmhouse that is off-grid. That means she generates her own electricity. So when the sun is shining, her solar panels are charging her battery bank, and she's got electricity. And that electricity stops being available around 10 o'clock at night. Yep. And Guineith, I'm talking about you. And I'm mentioning that your electricity...
How are you this morning?
Hey,
How are you this morning?
Very, very, very well. And you?
I'm kind of doing all right.
I'm mentioning that while we're waiting for you, that you're a farmer and you're raising your boys. You are a single mom. Your husband passed away, and you do things, with manual labor on your farm. You don't have a tractor, and that you have an off-grid situation where you generate your own electricity with your solar panels. And when the sun is shining, all is well. When the sun is not shining, there's no electricity. And that the electricity wanes off around 10 o'clock at night when it's dark, and you've consumed the reserves from the battery bank, and then it's dark. And right now, it's, what time is it right now, Guineith, in Australia?
It's just after midnight here. We were out for a while this evening, so we turned the inverter off while we were out, and so we still have electric lights at the moment.
Well, I guess this is probably one of the very, very few times that you've had electricity operating during the broadcast. So Guineith is using a landline, and the reason I'm mentioning this is, class, I don't know anyone who would even consider undertaking going live on an international broadcast picked up by affiliates throughout the United States and satellites and so forth in the dark, okay, without the aid of a bank of computers or a computer or lights in order to read notes. So you are just going off the top of your head with, if you have a light, it's one of those little solar-powered lights that you might buy at a big box store, but that's about it. Is that right?
That's right. Yeah, most of the time. And like I said, we had an evening out. The boys went to a Bible study, and I spent some time with friends. And we all came home at around about between 9 and 10 at night yesterday evening, just a few hours ago. And so we turn, normally when we go out, we turn the inverter off. That's what converts that's the transformer that converts the 24 volt that's in the batteries to 240-volt supply that runs all of the regular appliances in the house. Normally when the lights go off at about 10, it doesn't matter because we're all ready to go to bed anyway. So,
Except
on
for
broadcast nights, of course, it's a bit different.
Right. May I read you a headline from the New York Post? Some people call it the New York Compost. It's a newspaper, but they've got a presence. They've got a presence on the internet. And this is right up our alley here. Here's the headline: Politicians fear for safety as threats against Congress skyrocket. Now we're talking about the U.S. Congress. A bunch of white-collar criminals, people who take bribes, people who threaten each other, people who try their best to run our lives and oppress us with rules and regulations and red tape and costs and taxes. I mean, those are the people we're talking about. So what's happening now is there is a bevy of threats against Congress, and they're saying that this is the new normal. This is the way it's going to be. People are they've had it. They've had it with Congress, and they've threatened them. Now, I'm not saying that we should threaten them. So those of you in the FBI and the NSA and the CIA and the Secret Service, I'm not saying that we should, but
and probably
other people,
ASIO onto the list as well.
Yeah.
The Australian
so other people
CIA.
are threatening.
They're probably listening too.
That's great. So, it's always good when people want to better themselves and improve their knowledge base. So I'm all for it. I'm all for all of these agents of these corporations that are posing as government to learn more about what they're doing, and maybe they'll stop doing it when they learn that they're actually being used as pawns in the big machine. So the threats, and I'm just reading this. One guy says that, quote, "The true reality is that if someone wanted to do me harm, they probably could do that with relative ease, and that is sad." And that was by Representative Chuck Fleischman, a Republican from Tennessee. He says that the threats against him have skyrocketed. In 2016, there were 902 threatening incidents and communications against members of Congress. By 2017, the reports have more than doubled to about 2,000. Now, what are they doing about it? Well, they've decided that the House Administration Committee has allocated $25,000 to each member in 2017 and again in 2018 to beef up their personal and office security. So they've given themselves $25,000 each in order to beef up their security. Now, the House Sergeant at Arms got an additional $5 million to improve office security for district offices. Congress has also increased funding for the Capitol Police by a small amount, $29.2 million in 2017 and $29.9 million in 2018. So, in recognition of the danger level, the Federal Election Commission also ruled that lawmakers can use campaign funds, typically spent on TV advertisements and mailers, to install security systems in their homes. So what they're doing is, these guys have oppressed people to the point where people are angry. So now these alleged representatives are using the funds that they've received to protect themselves from the people who are frosted. I understand why people are frosted. I really do. If I had to check in with the government because I wanted to add an outlet, an electrical outlet on the wall, in order to meet with their approval, if I had to do that, I'd be pretty frosted too. Now, I don't have to do that, and I'm not going to do that. But in some locations, you have to do that kind of thing. You want to make some modifications to your plumbing? You got to call the other team. Get one of their licensed and approved people to do it so that you can be overcharged, right? And then you have to have your building inspector guy come out and say, all right, so I see, yeah, it looks good. Yep, you move that outlet over 6 feet. Mm-hmm, yep, okay. What they really want to do is have an inventory of your home and know what you've improved so they can tax you more. That's what that's all about. Just in many locations, just try building a deck without, asking for the permission. And I wouldn't stand for that. And that's why I live where I live, where we don't have a building inspector. There's no building inspectors here in our neck of the woods. It's really kind of nice. Gwyneth?
Well, I'll tell you what, I've got a really, really interesting piece of news. I was humming and hawing whether to share this or not, but I think I actually will. When I was coming home from my friend's place, I actually had to travel on the bus. Okay. And do you know something? The people at the local supermarket and the people who run the local hardware store, they, lately have not been so nice to me. That's really not any great surprise, okay, because, I've pointed out some things in the past that have been kind of wrong in this community, like, for instance, the way that the police were operating a sex racketeering scam of, issuing infringement notices of hundreds of dollars and then letting people off when they agreed to provide a night's entertainment. A lot of ordinary people, supposedly ordinary people in this community didn't really like that. And so, they decided that they were going to,
Hold that thought. Hold that thought, Gwyneth. Hold that thought. We'll be right back. And she's been talking about racketeering. So racketeering is the act of offering a dishonest service.
Yeah.
A group, an organized group, offering a dishonest service. Yeah. Please continue.
Okay. Now, I know that you live in a small rural community, Vincent. If any of the class has not lived in a small rural community, they're missing out.
Yeah.
They are missing out because, do you know something? People in rural communities, they all know each other. So the people down at the local extortion racket, aka the police station, they know the people who run the supermarket, and they talk with the people who run the supermarket. They talk with the people who, are the local bus drivers, and they talk with the people who run this part of the community and that and the municipality. And would you agree that everybody in that community is more or less in a state of communication constantly?
Sure. There's, there are clubs. There are clubs like
they have lodges.
Yeah.
And I don't know quite what the exact mechanics of the local rumour mills are, but I know that if you get on the wrong side of them, they can be positively vicious. And especially if you get on the wrong side of a particularly powerful end of it, like, for instance, the local goon squad. The local police, for instance. I don't know, I'm just speculating here, just trying to join dots, I suppose. But when you get the local bus driver complaining because you're meaning me, that I'm bringing my groceries home on the bus from the neighbouring town, and saying, why aren't you buying your groceries in the local town? When the people at the local supermarket have, just being totally discourteous to me, to the point where I just
Gwyneth,
shop there anymore.
So, Gwyneth, you're voting with your wallet, is that correct? So if they're discourteous, you say, you know what, I don't have to be beat up to spend my money here. I can get beat up anywhere to spend my money. So I'm going to go where people are nice to me. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, that's right. But then the bus driver, because, I don't know, maybe he's friends with the people around the local supermarket, starts complaining because I bring my groceries home on the bus. And,
Is it, are you tying up the back third of the bus? Is that the problem?
No. There's like 3, 4 people on the bus. This is like a 60, 80-seater coach or whatever,
and you just have a few bags with you.
Well, I have maybe, between 4 and 6 bags. These are
I don't see any problem.
3 bags of shopping.
Yeah, I don't see any problem with this.
Yeah, and there's maybe sometimes between 4 and 6 people. The bus is hardly ever full. It's hardly ever more than half full. Mm-hmm. Okay. But it runs a route of maybe a couple of 100 kilometres. And I get off maybe 60 or 80 kilometres into a route that's maybe 200 kilometres long. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So, this is Australia. The distances are probably a bit bigger than what a lot of people in the US are used to. But that's, you sort of think, well, why, other people carry their groceries home on the bus. What's your issue with me? And then they, sometimes you don't have time to buy a ticket. They're supposed to have facilities to buy tickets on the bus. And if you've got a large note, they're supposed to be able to change it.
Yeah. And so what would a large note be? Like 20?
Petty little things. But, you think...
So what's a large note, 20?
What's your problem?
What's a large note, $20, $50?
$50. They should have capacity to change a $50 note.
Half a tank of gas. We'll be right back. So we're talking about living in a rural village where most people know each other, and it kind of seems like if one person isn't happy with you, it kind of spreads like wildfire, and then pretty soon they're talking about you. Pretty soon it's like minutes, and then everybody seems to know that someone's unhappy with you, and then many people might join in, and it's unpleasant, and it's not very different from where we live. A lot of people don't like us, and they say things like, "Yeah, I know you're anti-government." Well, that's not true. That's not true. We're not anti-government. We're anti-illegal government. We're anti-corrupt government. We're anti-oppressive government. We're anti-mean, rotten people who are trying to steal from us. We're not against government, but we're against the corruption, the white collar corruption of people posing as government.
That's about.
Please continue.
So I was just my response to his absolutely unconscionably rude behaviour towards me and my groceries, bringing my groceries home, was silence. Because I did not trust myself to open my mouth and give a wise answer. And when you don't trust yourself to open your mouth and not completely fly off the handle at somebody, then maybe it's best to keep your mouth shut. And that's what I did. Now, he misinterpreted, I think, my silence for weakness. And in reality, I was fuming inside. I really was. I was so upset. But the thing is, if I had said anything, I'd said anything at all, it would have created an argument. Okay? And the end result of that would have been one of two scenarios. He would have opened the door and said, out in the middle of the night, 40 kilometres from anywhere, and certainly a long, long way from home, or he would have said, right, you're being disruptive, I'm calling the police. So I just want to, over the radio, ask this bus driver, although he may never hear this broadcast, you know, I'm fairly sure that I'm a single woman, a single mother, living in a reasonably remote location without an automobile, that maybe I've had some degree of trouble since I've been here. What if it was your wife or your sister or your mother that was in that situation? How would you feel if you found out that a local bus driver had treated your wife or your mother or your sister in that way? How would you feel? And I can be fairly confident that he would not have a good response to that. And I'm fairly sure that the only reason that he had felt that he could push me around was because he was fairly sure that I was a single mother, okay, and that I was in a position of dependency on his bus service, that he was perhaps friends with the local supermarket owner, and that a couple of days previously I had told the local supermarket owner that I wouldn't be buying anything from her business anymore, or from the hardware store, which is also owned by the same couple, because of their poor customer service, in a nutshell. Okay, how would you feel if it was your family member that was going through that? What would your response be? I can tell you, I had things that I would love to have said, but I knew that it probably would not have ended up going well for me at that time. So my response was this. I wrote him a note. I said, listen, because he accused me of taking meat. This is the silliness of it, I kid you not, of taking meat without a chiller into the luggage compartment. And, it was a cool evening, for one thing, and I'm fairly sure that chillers are not permitted as luggage in this particular bus service. Okay? I may be wrong, but it was in one of these, the mylar-lined zip-top supermarket bags that you get for taking things like meat and ice cream and such like home from the supermarket. I'm not sure if they have those in America.
Yeah, they do, and you have to pay for them. You pay extra to buy them.
That's right. Mm-hmm. You pay extra for them. That's the sort of supermarket bags that I had, not the, fine plastic ones. They had a zipped top. They have a mylar lining to keep things like ice cream and meat cool, okay? And, how would you feel if it was your wife or your girlfriend that was having to endure this? Would you...
I'd be pretty frosted. I'd be pretty frosted. I'd be pretty frosted.
Yeah.
Guineith, who owns this bus company? Is this a municipal bus?
No, it's Victorian state government.
Well, okay, so that's the whole problem.
Public bus
the whole
service.
problem is, that's the whole problem. This guy wanted to be a cop and push people around, and he didn't make it. So he's driving a bus.
Well, it's like this. This is just my hypothesizing, trying to join dots, and I could be way off here. Okay, so I reserve the right to be wrong. But, the local police, they have to go through and they have to, check the buses and make sure that everything's in order. And I'm sure that the local bus drivers, in the process of the police doing their regular checks to make sure the buses are roadworthy and all that they must sit down and have a coffee and a smoke with the bus drivers after that, maybe. and that they get to share the local gossip and, you know, what's been happening and, you know, maybe, you know, what's been, you know, who's been making trouble for various people in the community. Not to say that, you know, that those people have necessarily done anything wrong, but it's gossip, you know.
Okay,
Would you
so
say
it's
that
clear.
sort of thing goes on? I'm just hypothesising here. I don't know anything for certain, but I'm just sort of spinning out saying, what is going on here? You know, why are these people having this attitude? You know, I've got to get my food, I've got to get my groceries from somewhere, you know, and the local supermarket's customer service goes through the floor, you know, and then I go to get my groceries from a neighbouring town and then bring it home on the bus, and then there, you know, the bus services customer service goes through the floor, and I'm sort of sitting back and thinking, what is going on here? And it's only natural to try and join dots. Does that make sense?
It absolutely does. And I can tell you that you're absolutely right. The fire department communicates with the police department. You know, the city services, the guys who drive the city garbage trucks, they all communicate at some level. And I can just see, you know, one of them saying, I had this gal on the bus, and do you know what she did? She brought her groceries on the bus. Can you imagine that? Can you imagine she went shopping and brought home bags of groceries on the bus? Was she tall? Was she about 6 feet tall?
In the luggage compartment. Okay,
yeah,
this is an intercity coach. It's not a suburban bus. Mm-hmm. It's an intercity coach with a massive luggage compartment.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And okay. Well, I'm hypothesizing here. Yeah, I'm hypothesizing that, you know, they're talking. Two guys are talking, and then one says, "Was she tall?" Yeah.
Curly hair.
Yeah. Well, I heard about her. Yeah, she's that troublemaker. You know, she
lives somewhere between town X and town Y, right?
Right. Yeah, that's the one. That's the one. So I know this is how it goes, because there was a guy who was traveling up and down our dirt road in front of our farm, and my wife and my son and I were outside working, you know, in a field on some fencing, and we saw this guy parked in the ditch looking at a brand new calf and his mama that was very close to the road. And it was very suspicious. So we went over toward him, and he took off. And then we saw him again, and when he saw us, he took off. So we got in the truck, and he was coming back again. I mean, it was really odd. It looked like he wanted to grab this, you know, 125-pound calf and steal it. Okay, it was on our mind, and we didn't accuse him of it. But we saw this guy, and we went down the road looking for him, and he was coming back again. And so our son turned his truck so he blocked the road. And then our son went over to him and said, so what are you doing? And ultimately, I joined our son, and I was in the overwatch position. And this guy looked at me and he said, I heard about you. You're the guy that shoots people. So, you know, people talk. People talk. And I'm sure that's the kind of thing that's been going on with you. We'll be right back. So, Guineith, are you seeing any other kind of retaliation for your activism, your helping people understand the corruption in your neck of the woods, Australia?
Well, I find that life is generally, you know, that not everybody in the community is like that. There are a lot of people who really appreciate, you know, me as a human being. I should point out, it wasn't I mentioned I wrote a note to the bus driver. I said I didn't say I had meat, I said I had supermarket, meaning shopping. Okay? And he accused me of not buying a ticket a previous time. And I said, well, I did buy a ticket when I got to Bendigo, which is the town that I'm talking about, the major city, okay, where, it's a big supermarket where people actually treat you decently and have good customer service. And I said, and by the way, here's some money to cover the fare. Okay. But like I said, would that have been acceptable in his eyes? And probably his response would have been something like, well, you're not my wife, you're not my sister, you're not my daughter, so I don't care. To which my response would be, yeah, but that's not my question. I said, would it be acceptable for you if somebody treated your wife, sister, daughter in that way? It doesn't matter, I know I'm not any of those to you, but a community is built on mutual consideration, even for people that you don't know, okay? That's more or less, and how it is. It's, you've got to understand, if you behave in this way, you're actually destroying your own community, okay? You're the ones who are doing it, not me. Because all I'm doing is saying, I'm the newbie around here, well, yes, okay, but there's a lot of new people around here, and, maybe we are upsetting the apple cart. Maybe the apple cart needs to be upset. Maybe there's things going on in this community that are just not right, and we're not going to play ball with your fixed systems of those people who are from, quote-unquote, around here, and that's just, Oh, yeah, and did I mention that a particular family up the back, who is a neighbour of ours who doesn't particularly get on with us, also operates a separate private other bus line, and that maybe the bus drivers from that bus line, from the family that doesn't like me, they also communicate with the other bus driver, Just, once again, hypothesis, speculation, me trying to join dots. Do you think that's possible?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Because they're from around here.
You're talking about a symptom of society in collapse.
Yeah.
There's I was reading an article.
What I'm talking about.
Yeah, I was reading an article about McDonald's. I'm talking about the restaurant chain known as the Golden Arches, McDonald's, the hamburger joint. And in Australia and in the UK, several of the McDonald's restaurants have decided that they want to lock the restrooms, the bathroom, so that you can't just go into the restaurant and use their bathroom without buying something. When we come back, I'll tell you a little bit about this. And there's a sign in one of them that says, toilets proudly provided for the use of McDonald's customers.
Yeah, they have those signs in McDonald's in Australia all the time.
Yeah, now let's talk about that. And I'll tell you why I don't like that. I'll tell you why I don't like that. Guineith and I will be right back. Now, did you see that you know the reason for that?
Yes.
All right.
Okay.
Guineith and I will be right back, and we're going to talk about McDonald's and locking of the restaurant. Everyone all set? Cocked? Locked? Hour number 2. The USA Prepared. Guineith Isaacs is with us live in Australia, and she's telling us, what's happening to her. And class, I want you to think about this. So it can happen to anyone, when you are at the mercy of the system, if you're at the mercy of a few vendors in town and you don't have transportation and you use the bus and you want to bring your groceries back on the bus, heck, people have been doing that as long as buses have been around. It's not unusual.
It's not a big deal.
Okay? It's not. It's not a big deal, and it's not unusual. I've seen it.
And
I've
do
seen
they
it when I was
harass
growing up.
everybody that brings their groceries home on the bus?
So, I mean, what is the bus for? What is the bus for?
For transport.
And to transport whatever you need with you. I mean, it's not like a service that, you could bring, your cattle with you. I mean, obviously that doesn't make sense, but I have no idea why people wouldn't be expected to go shopping and come back on the bus. Makes no sense. Sometimes you might even have a return that you bought and you want to return it to the store, and you bring it with you going outbound on the bus and bring it to the store and come back with nothing. I mean, I don't see the problem. But I do see this as a sign of the disintegration of society. And here's another part. We talked about at the end of the last hour, I talked about McDonald's, the hamburger joint, Golden Arches, in Australia and the UK. If you want to use the bathroom, all you have to do is use the code at the back on the bottom of your receipt, and then you type in that code, and it will unlock the bathroom door. Okay. Well, that's not the way it works for me. Before I go and eat, I go into the restaurant's bathroom. Now, why do I do that? Do it for a lot of reasons. One, I may want to wash my hands. I may want to use the facilities. I may want to wash up before I eat, because it makes more sense to me to wash before you eat rather than not wash before you eat. Okay? And I use the restroom as a general indication of the cleanliness, the sanitation, and how clean is the kitchen. Because if the bathroom is trashy, I think the kitchen's going to be trashy too. So I use that as an indicator of whether I would want to eat at a particular location. So first thing I do, into the bathroom. Well, if it's locked, that doesn't set well with me. So I leave. Now, I understand that maybe there are people who go to the restrooms and don't buy anything. Well, that's the cost of doing business. Maybe there are people who go into the restroom and absolutely trash them. Are disrespectful to everyone, meaning all the people who are going to come in after them. Some people, see if they can aim and hit the toilet with their eyes closed. Seems like there are plenty of people that seem to be doing that.
Oh, my gosh. Vincent, I faced that circumstance today when I was in Bendigo. Mm-hmm. I was in a certain public toilet. And, it was a unisex public toilet. And I do not like unisex public toilets. This particular unisex public toilet, I went in and I really needed to do some business in there, and I could not sit down on the seat because somebody had missed, and it was somebody who was male, and it wasn't necessarily urine that they had put all over the toilet seat. And I was just completely disgusted and
of course
walked out of that bathroom.
Yeah,
so,
it's not just
a real turn-off. And so I did go to a restaurant, and I did buy a coffee, and I did use the restroom in the restaurant. Mm-hmm. Which they allowed me to use while they were preparing my coffee because it wasn't McDonald's. But I think McDonald's in Bendigo, I think that they do allow you to use the restroom if you even buy a coffee. Okay, but in Melbourne, I have personal experiences of a long time ago, many years ago, dining in a McDonald's restaurant in Melbourne and having to deal with there being a passed-out junkie in the toilets, in the ladies' toilets, female passed-out junkie in the ladies' toilets. And I went out and I informed the manager that there was somebody who was having health problems in the toilet. And he says, oh, yeah, well, that happens all the time, and I think that he might have called an ambulance. But that's certainly a good reason to actually lock your toilets, especially if you're located in an area where there are a lot of drug users. That people will go into the toilets to use drugs and they'll pass out on the floor, and it's just not a good look for the restaurant to have passed out junkies on the bathroom floor.
I agree.
So,
and here's something else that I've seen as a result of not having restrooms that are accessible to the public. I was traveling down a city street, small city, on the East Coast, and Mrs. Finelli was with me. And we're traveling slowly because the speed limits are slow, and there was a traffic light. We stopped at the light. And there was this guy who was obviously had to relieve himself. And it looked like he probably had a tough time finding a restroom. So he just stood at the door of a business on the main drag in the city and just urinated on the front door. He's just standing there, you know, with his arm up over his head, kind of supporting himself, and he's just urinating on the front door. And it wasn't like it was a quick thing. I mean, it was a, traffic light of a couple minutes, and he's just going and going and going and going again. And so that's a problem.
I'm cringing.
That is a problem. Well, what I'm saying is there's got to be a balance between locking the restrooms and then having people urinating on the front door. And frankly, if the restroom is messy, I'm not going there. I'm just not going in there. I mean, to buy anything from that. So I literally use the restroom as a gauge of whether I want to, and it's a kind of an acid test. It's either go or no go. There's never any maybe. And I use the employees as another acid test. Go, no go. And what I mean by that is I was in Sam's Club about a week ago, picking up a couple items in Springfield, Missouri, and they have an eating area where you can get a hot dog, you can get a slice of pizza, you can get a whole pizza, you can get a yogurt. And so I went up to the counter and I said, yogurt. I think I'd like to get one of those yogurts. Actually, I'd like to get one for me and my wife. And would that be okay? And the guy starts scratching his face. You know, he's rubbing his nose, he's scratching his lips. And I said,
oh, dear.
Tell you what, never
I'll
mind.
Just give that one a miss.
And I left. He said, you don't want it? I said, no, I don't want it. He's trying to figure out, okay, so this guy walks up, wants a couple yogurts, and then all of a sudden, bam, he changed his mind. What was wrong with that guy? Meaning me. He's probably thinking that I'm indecisive, but he's probably so self-absorbed that he had as a millennial, he had no idea that the problem was I was concerned, and he was one of these light loafered guys. I don't know if you're allowed to use the word queer, but that came to mind. And so I'm thinking, there's a huge risk here of me catching something from this guy, whether it be a cold or something, or worse.
I was going to
and
say
I wasn't
worse.
interested. Yeah. That's why I like you so much. We're on the same page. And I just said no. And then I was walking out the door, and at Sam's Club.
You can catch from saliva.
Yeah. So I was walking out the door, and they have these the opposite of greeters. At Walmart, they used to have greeters. That would be these senior citizens that would, hand you a cart. The idea was that really what they're telling their employees is there's that guy, he knows where we are, who we are, and we are employees, and he really wants to make sure that people don't leave without paying for things, meaning the employees giving things to their friends through the register, meaning not ringing up all the items that a person was passing through that conveyor belt. All right, so that would be a greeter. Well, they have these exit people at Sam's Club, and they want to check your receipts. So they look at, okay, there are 17 items in your cart, and they look to make sure that 17 items were rung up, and it probably there is a 1-to-1 correlation with the items that were rung up with the items in your cart, and they look at it, they scan it, they draw a colored line, either red or blue or purple or something, through your receipt, and out you go. So I stopped with this guy, and I said, I was going to buy a couple of yogurts, but I decided not to, because the guy was rubbing his face and his nose and his lips, and it just kind of grossed me out, and I didn't want to buy it. He said, "That guy over there?" I said, "Yeah, that's the guy." He said, "That guy right there?" I said, "Yeah, that's the guy." Mm-hmm. So evidently, someone was going to talk. He was probably going to talk to the general manager of the store and say, "We got a complaint."
Have the ad started?
So I was talking with our engineer during the break, and we're talking about the millennials, and I'm kind of hard on the millennials, but I really think that a huge problem that the millennials have is the fault of my generation. I think that as parents, and when I say we, I'm not including me really, but I'm saying we as my generation, the baby boomers. We had it the easiest of all the preceding generations. We didn't live through wars. We didn't live through our cities being bombed by our enemies. We didn't live through the Great Depression, the first Great Depression. We had it pretty easy, and our parents wanted us to have it better than they had it. And of course, I think that we wanted our children to have it better. So many of my generation just said, here's some money, go be happy. Here's some money, go be happy. Go have fun. And many of my generation seem to forget to teach our children about personal responsibility. We seem to forget to teach our children that, you need to earn it in order to get it. You need to save rather than squander. And as a result, and we dumb them down. We said, we think that education should feel good. And it's okay to be different. It's okay if boys like boys, and girls like girls. And that's all okay. It's just a different lifestyle. Everything's okay. And we want you to be happy. And I think that that's what our generation has done to the detriment of the millennial generation. And we're guilty. We're guilty of doing that. We're guilty of allowing stupid people to run our schools. We should have yanked them out, thrown them out. Instead, we allow multicultural studies instead of the hard sciences. What feels good? Sociology, and we'll have Black History Month. Okay. Why not just
What about White History Month?
Well, I haven't seen that yet. If they ever offer a course,
I don't think you will. Well, that's racist.
Yeah.
To have White History Month is racist, and to have Black History Month is not, apparently.
I think kidnapping people and selling them as slaves is absolutely beyond the pale. It's horrible. Good.
Then let's shut down Child Protective Services.
Correct.
And the, child sex trafficking that inevitably follows in the wake of CPS involvement. Let's shut that down.
Mm-hmm. And let's shut down arresting people for drug use that would be considered something that George Washington might have done. Smoking hemp. Okay?
Yeah.
I'm not a drug user. I don't want to be a drug user, but I don't want to pay for people to be imprisoned, removed from being of value to the planet by putting them in prison for using drugs, like marijuana.
And then forcing them to work for $1 a day, sewing ladies' underwear for Victoria's Secret.
Yeah, or making carpet for Shaw Industries. Yes, private prisons. Yep. And,
That's what happens. That's slavery.
Yeah,
That's kidnapping somebody and enslaving them, putting them in a forced labour camp and enslaving them. And yes,
Now,
technically you don't have to work in the prison, but otherwise you're going to just about literally die of boredom. And then you are not going to have any money to spend on anything extra, that the people in the prison might decide from their company store to sell you.
Yep, we'll be right back. Guineith, what else did you want to share with us today?
Okay, it really is amazing how these people think that they've got everything tied up. Okay? They think that by them giving you a bad time, that they are making their own position more secure, when in reality they're forgetting about this little thing called karma. Okay? Now, karma doesn't operate through any human agency. Okay? It comes from, the ancients said it came from the heavens, or it came from God, okay, or it came from the gods, depending on what part of the world you lived in. So it's not something that is orchestrated by any particular human soul. But I think that Jesus Christ said it best of all. He said, "Do not be deceived. God is not mocked. That which a man soweth, he shall also reap." Okay? Like I said, I didn't have to give that bus driver, just $20 out of my pocket because he accused me of stealing a bus fare, which was not true, okay? I wanted to make a point to him. And I don't want anyone to pat me on the back for saying that now, that I did that, okay? But what I want to say is this. If you think that you can give somebody else a bad time and not suffer the consequences of it forever, then you have got another thing coming. Because this world is falling apart pretty darn quickly, and your own behavior just serves as more evidence of that, okay? When you can't go out, or somebody, giving you a bad time over a crooked toenail, okay, and meanwhile, something that really, really should get looked at in your community is just shoved under the carpet. You can't have a society like that. It's going to collapse. It's going to explode, or it's going to implode. And if you think that that sort of society can keep going, just go and look in one of these sorts of little country towns and see how many empty houses there are, boarded up houses there are, burnt down houses there are, okay? And you will see that that is a boarded up shop front, shop fronts with broken picture windows. This is a sign of collapse. What are you going to do when it becomes uneconomical for V-Line to run their buses because the local teenagers are going on the bus with razor blades? Not my children. My children wouldn't do that. But other children in our community certainly would. My children have been properly brought up. They don't do that sort of thing. They have respect for private property. But what are you going to do, when every 3 weeks you have to rip all the seats out of the bus and replace all the seats? How secure do you think your job is going to be, Mr. Bus Driver? When the teenagers in our community are burning houses down for fun now, okay? I have friends who have lost their houses because local teenagers have burnt their houses down. I've got one friend who doesn't have a back door anymore because a local teenager who lived reasonably close to her came at 3 a.m. in the morning and busted her back door down and told her that he was going to kill her. What do you do when a society gets like that? It's because people forget God. They forget the ancient ways of sowing and reaping, okay? Nobody has any value to anything anymore. So you get to the stage where teenagers, for fun, decide that they're going to get a rock and, inscribe their signature on the window of the bus during a 40-kilometre bus journey. I wouldn't do that. My children wouldn't do that. That's just stupid, But there's a lot of children and young people in our community who would absolutely do that, Oh, you've got security cameras on the bus. Oh, that's good. You can recognize the teenagers. What are you going to do? You're going to go and arrest them, okay? Well, you go and arrest them, and then, 48 hours later, they're back out on the street. And what are their family members going to do to the bus depot? I don't know. But this is not anything that I would do. But there's people in our community who absolutely would do that. Do you know what I mean? Does that make sense, Vincent? I didn't, just they're not thinking.
All right,
they're
let me give you an example.
Absolutely not thinking. Does this make sense? This is just how society in general is going. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
does
I do.
Make
let me
sense
give you
to
an
you?
Yes, it does, and let me give you an example of what's happening right here in the United States. The latest information I have as of January of this year is that the median house price in the United States is $188,900. We'll call it $189,000. Okay, we'll round it up by $100. So the median price in the United States is $189,000. Okay. In Detroit, Michigan, which used to be the automobile capital of the world, it used to have a population of 1.8 million residents in the 1950s. Now it's 673,000 people. Wow. The median home price is not 189,000, it's 43,000. The poverty rate is 35.7%. The percent of people in Detroit, Michigan, with at least a bachelor's degree is roughly 15%. All right. That's the worst place in the United States to live. The second worst place is Flint, Michigan.
Oh, no. We all know about Flint. There's lead in the water.
Right. Median home price, $28,000. I'm just rounding, okay? Poverty rate, 44%. 44% meet the requirements to be in the poverty rate. Percent with a bachelor's degree, at least a bachelor's degree, 10%. The third worst place in the United States to live is near our neck of the woods, St. Louis, Missouri. The median home price is a lot higher. It's $126,000. Poverty rate, 23%. Then the fourth worst place is Memphis, Tennessee. Median home value is $97,000. Poverty rate, 27%. And percent with a bachelor's degree or higher is 26%. So there is a correlation with education and home values and poverty. Cleveland is the fifth, Cleveland, Ohio is the fifth worst place, according to what I've read in the United States. The median home value is $67,000, poverty rate 35%, and 16% have at least a bachelor's degree. Wilmington, Delaware, median home, $146,000, poverty rate 28%, and 26% have at least a bachelor's degree. Now, Wilmington, Delaware is an anomaly. It is home to most of the major credit card issuers in the country. I'm talking about like J.P. Morgan, Citi, First Chicago, companies like that. And yet, even with that, even with the credit card banking center of the United States being in Wilmington, Delaware, the poverty rate is 28%. And Albany, Georgia, Median home, 89,000. Poverty rate, 33%. And percent with a bachelor's degree is 20.1%. Now, also in our neck of the woods, on the other side of us, St. Louis is to the east. Springfield, Missouri is to the west. Springfield, Missouri is the 8th worst place in the country to live. Median home, 116,000. Poverty rate, 25%, and percent with at least a bachelor's degree is 26%. So those are just a few of the statistics of the United States and where it's not a great place to live. Crime is out of control in all of those locations.
And that's just not even the Appalachian Mountains.
That's where there's extreme poverty. Extreme poverty in the Appalachians.
Poverty, 100, just in most areas, something like 90% poverty. Something like, maybe 1% bachelor's degree.
Right.
I've
spent time in the Appalachians. Some people will call it the Appalachians, but the natives would call it the Appalachians. Yeah. And I had a property in the mountains, and it was 26 acres on top of a mountain cabin. The annual property taxes were $33. $32 a year.
A year. Yeah,
that's how poor
that property was beautiful, but wasn't worth much.
It was absolutely magnificent, except it wasn't worth much. You're absolutely right. Yeah. We'll be right back. So, class, I changed my name on Facebook, and it's part of my plan to remove myself from Facebook. So, my last name is Finelli, Finelli, and I use my real name. Many broadcasters don't use their real name. They hide. Well, I use my real name. So it's Vincent Finelli, but I changed it on Facebook. I changed it to Survivalist. So it shows up as Vincent Survivalist. And the reason I did that is my long-term plan to throw overboard Facebook is, number one, to change my name. And then I'm going to follow that by changing my email address to an email address that I'm just going to use for the purpose of telling Facebook that's my email address, a new one. And then I'm going to delete myself from Facebook. So when they try to find me, they'll find that my name isn't correct and my email address has been shut down. So that's the plan. And you may want to consider doing the same thing with Facebook. So if you're looking for me, you won't find me under Finelli. You'll find me under Survivalist, Vincent Survivalist, as if Survivalist is my last name. Then I'm going to change my first name to a common first name. Then I'm going to change my last name again to a really common last name, like Smith, Jones, Brown, White, something like that. We were talking about the average price of a home in the United States at roughly $189,000. And we're talking about cities that are considered some of the worst places to live in the United States. Well, the capital of West Virginia is Charleston, 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 West Virginia. And Charleston, West Virginia is the 22nd worst place to live in the United States. The population is about 50,000. Median home price is $150,000. Poverty rate's 20%. And percent with at least a bachelor's degree is 39%. So it seems like people are educated there, and it's the capital city, and you would kind of expect that because government prides itself on hiring people with letters after their names. Well, the city of Charleston has high crime rates, both violent and property crimes, more than 3 times the national average. The city air quality is so poor that about 18% of the days per year are considered as hazardous.
Wow, that's
amazing.
That's almost 1 in 5 days.
Right. Almost 1 in 5 days are considered hazardous to breathe.
Actually, it would be more than a day a week.
Yeah.
It would be more than 1 day a week. Yeah, 18% doesn't sound like much until you point out that it's almost a fifth of the days. That means it's at least 1 day a week, and many weeks probably 2 days a week. Now, talking about crime rates, can I say what's happening in Australia with our blue team?
Please do.
It's been all over the press, here in Australia, including in the toilet paper of record, The Age, which actually told the truth for once, in Melbourne. That's one of them. Melbourne has two major dailies, The Age and the Herald Sun. And The Age reported probably about 3 weeks ago that 1 in 5 breathalyzer readings was found to be counterfeit, where the policeman had blown into the bag. How's that? 1 in 5.
You know, and you
200 and around about 258,000. That means that 1 in 5 police officers on the beat, on average, has a breath reading of over 0.05. That's legally intoxicating.
And they're blowing into the bag.
1 in 5 cops on the beat.
And they're blowing into the bag as if it's you.
Yeah.
And well, here's the result. Your result shows you were intoxicated.
They have to be drunk to do that.
And that's in the media. Gwyneth, thank you so much.